It's well known that China is trying to build up their influence around the world, especially in the Indo-Pacific. Well, congressional members are focused on the U.S. building more partnerships in the region to protect our safety and interests. Our Washington, D.C. correspondent Rachel Knapp reports.
Here in Shanghai in the People's Republic of China to work on issues that matter to the American people.
Last week, Secretary of State Antony Blinken traveled to China, visiting with President Xi Jinping, senior officials, and students, advocating to better U.S.-Chinese relations. His visit aims to help cool tensions between the U.S. and China by keeping communication channels open to avoid any misunderstandings or any miscalculations. China was one of the big topics in a recent Senate Foreign Relations hearing. The focus was on strengthening U.S. allies and partnerships in the Indo-Pacific. Senators and international relations experts say China's influence in the region is growing.
The U.S. made two flawed geopolitical assumptions last century. One, we assumed that the PRC would morph into something resembling a global force for good. And two, that Russia would no longer threaten its neighbors or the West. Today, the Russian bear is afoot, and we find ourselves shooting well behind the Peking duck. We must step up our game, or we'll find ourselves outgunned, literally and figuratively. While challenges to our interests in the Indo-Pacific are real and daunting, I believe our resolve is powerful and durable. We find ourselves again in peer competition, not near peer, but peer competition with adversaries who are developing and deploying cutting-edge weaponry and information disorder to undermine democracy and defeat us.
In the hearing, senators say one way to deter China's growing influence is to continue strengthening our own allies and partnerships.
The truth is that one of the United States' greatest strategic advantages are our alliances.
A balance of power favorable to the United States protects U.S. interests and ally sovereignty, advances economic prosperity, and ensures no one has to bow to a bully. However, this balance is being challenged. The greatest threat of regional domination, of course, comes from China, supported by a growing China-Russia strategic partnership.
Who are China's closest friends? Russia, Iran, North Korea. Some of the worst human rights abusers in the world that repress the hope and dreams of their citizens. Meanwhile, we have 5 mutual defense treaties with Japan, South Korea, Australia, the Philippines, and Thailand. And our partnerships include New Zealand, Singapore, Vietnam, Indonesia, India, Mongolia, and Taiwan, and the list goes on. No one wants to be left off. Why? It's not just because we have the greatest military in the world, it's because of our values. It's because while others might use debt trap diplomacy to buy influence, the United States is working to bring peace and stability and prosperity.
Another way to deter China's influence is by helping countries be less dependent on China.
The best way to assure the long-term stability of the Indo-Pacific, of a free and open Indo-Pacific without Americans going to war, is to encourage and support the economic growth of countries like India, Indonesia, Vietnam, and the Philippines, in the hope that at some point, as these countries are more dynamic, powerful, and wealthy, even in Beijing, they'll understand that their dream of dominating the Indo-Pacific is simply not realistic. It's too big for any one country, even China, to control. And so this must always be a core element of our strategy in the region.
Recently, Congress passed a multi-billion-dollar foreign aid bill. Part of that bill included roughly $8 billion for the Indo-Pacific region, like providing money for Taiwan's defense, improving the submarine industrial base, and more. For the most part, senators are in agreement. They have to work together to keep China from dominating the region.
China knows it can get what it wants if it proves U.S. alliances and partnerships are not up to the task when things get tough.
In Washington, D.C., Rachel Knapp, Guam News Now.